Right. Yes. I'm not sharing. So I thought, that's why it looks weird. Sorry. So let me just share the same slide. And if anybody would like to, we had a wonderful discussion in one of the rooms with some of the colleagues who joined. And people talked about, first of all, we shouldn't pre-diagnose the situation, and maybe in that meeting with this critical friend meeting, maybe we should let the other person reflect, give a little bit, give some more information about the context of the feedback, what is the assignment, how was feedback given. We could actually ask the colleague to give examples of feedback that was given, and let that person reflect out loud. And maybe during this reflection process, they would realize what improvements they have to make, perhaps. And then we discussed that, it's so difficult to give, let's say, to give feedback as a teacher, and every person gives feedback in a different way. But we talked about how we use meta language in our feedback, and perhaps the students don't understand what we mean by that, and maybe we should give examples. And so in this way, we can guide the students towards what they should do. Am I forgetting something of the things we said? I mean, we said more things, but anybody else that would like to share what was said in your groups?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes, Faith,
I
please.
thought you were talking to your group about if there's anyone else who wanted to share in your group, but then I passed the
Yeah.
sentence properly. I think in our group we pretty much discussed the same thing. So we also
Mm-hmm.
talked about the language that maybe our colleague was using. Do the students know this language? Is it a shared language? So,
Mm-hmm.
for
Mm-hmm.
example, is there too much jargon? Is it too dense? Or possibly are you giving too much information and it's maybe overwhelming for the students?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Um, we mentioned how we might say to our colleague, you know, that we need to make our feedback focused. We have to be aware that students will also not immediately apply it. We also wondered if our colleague had done any kind of assessment literacy as the course, for example, perhaps doing explicit training on how to read the feedback, but also how to action feedback into feed forward. And we also thought there's some potential solutions. I mean, those are solutions as well, but like practical classroom
Mm-hmm.
solution. We thought perhaps our colleague for this instance would maybe need to organize some tutorials, either one to
Yeah.
one or one to three, just to kind of help with this particular
Mm-hmm.
feedback. And then more longer term, our colleague might need to consider either A, how they are giving the feedback, and B, whether the students are being adequately prepared to know
Mm-hmm.
what to do with the feedback. I think that's
Great.
everything from our
Yeah.
group. Somebody correct me if I've missed anything vital. Okay, nobody's shouting at me, so I guess that's right.
Great. Thank you very much, Faith. Anybody else who would like to talk on behalf of another group, maybe?
There's something in the chat.
Oh, okay. Great.
Sorry, yeah, I just put our list of questions in the chat, but I think it's very close to what already has been mentioned. But yeah, it's there.
Okay. So let me have a look. Yeah, great. So how much feedback was given? What kind of language was used? Yes, I think we all agree, and we all had more or less the same ideas. Was the feedback in the form of suggestions? Yes. And then, yes, was the student asked? What was the student asked to do with the feedback? Did they have the opportunity to discuss? Yes. Great. Yeah. And what happens after the student gets feedback? Absolutely. Yes. What do they do with it? Yeah. Great. Great questions. Thank you very much, Maria. Is there anybody else who would like to share, or was it 3 groups or 4 groups? I don't remember. Yeah, open questions, exactly, yeah. So I think it was 3 groups, right? Was it 3 rooms? All right, so in this case, I think I've stopped sharing. So Natasha, if you're ready, our colleague Natasha is going to continue by talking about the critical freelancer friends and practical applications.
Okay, let me just thank you, Antigone. And yeah, we did have some very interesting discussions in our group. For those of you who may have joined a little later, my name's Natasha, and Antigone and I are colleagues. We met on a pre-sessional course. This will become more apparent and important towards the end of my part of the presentation today. So what I'm going to talk about today is I'm going to talk about freelance EAP practitioners and the CPD that we, as I am a freelancer, to choose, and also looking at critical friendships for CPD. So trying to connect both. Now, the reason why I'm talking about one second, excuse me. The reason why I'm talking about freelancers is, in fact, I recently completed a master's degree in TESOL, and my dissertation focused on freelance EAP practitioners and the choices they make for their CPD in relation. So I was more specifically looking at gaining employment on pre-sessional courses. The first question that I asked my participants is what they considered to be essential CPD for EAP. And the focus is on essential. So they considered informal CPD, such as today's session, attending webinars, and if they weren't able, also the recorded versions. So, for example, BALIP has the YouTube channels, and all of the participants watched webinars and presentations. Obviously, Antigone's already mentioned, I think that just in the introduction, the teaching certificate that you and another colleague had done together. So teaching certificates such as CELT and Delta were considered essential, but also, and more recently, short-term CPD courses, such as those run by NILE and the British Council. And also more recently, freelancers were looking at more technology-related courses, such as technology-assisted language learning, AI, etc., as well as EAP pedagogy. Also, a few of my participants had taken TEAP courses. So these are award-bearing courses run by various universities. They found those to be extremely useful, not only for personal, professional development, but also for gaining employment. And a few of my participants referred to BALIP accreditation as being essential. And one of the participants, I believe, was already engaged in trying to attain this. Of course, everybody considered award-bearing courses to be essential, such as master's degrees and PhDs. So because of the precarious nature of EAP, there were some participants who already had master's degrees, and they were seriously considering a second master's degree and or a PhD. Interestingly, just one of the respondents referred to critical friends. And to be honest, I hadn't actually thought about critical friends very much, I'm going to be honest, or even critical friends as a form of CPD. before I continue with Critical Friends, I just want to mention EAP practitioner motivation. I was also researching how motivated freelancers were in choosing and participating in their CPD. So there were high levels of autonomous motivation, especially in in-person CPD courses. A few who had done the TEAP courses, they actually had an opportunity, I think, once a week to meet up online with the other students. I think almost all participants referred to the in-house pre-sessional CPD run by universities. They found this to be very useful because of the peer interactions, of course. So as I have here, allowed for sharing EAP knowledge and also maintaining currency. And the reason for this is that they were actually interacting with in-sessional tutors, so permanently employed staff, and they felt this to be a great motivation for them. At the other end of the motivation scale, well, not exactly, more extrinsic motivation was seen in award-bearing CPD, and I just referred to freelancers already having a master's degree, but feeling that they had to then do a second master's degree. So freelance EAP practitioners and those in more precarious employment situations have a lot of external pressures. And one of them is actually choosing the appropriate EAP. There are many different kinds of courses. Freelancers, we tend to work alone. And so making those decisions were actually very stressful. Obviously, the fact that we make these choices in order to obtain employment in EAP, and also the time and money spent on CPD were things that the participants referred to. So all of this we can see adds to freelancers' professional insecurity. And unfortunately, these days, it's not just freelance EAP practitioners. So moving on to our critical friendships. As Antigone mentioned before, a critical friend needs to be someone with expertise and experience in the content or disciplinary area. So I'm quoting Liu et al., as you can see here. And I'll give an example. Antigone is a highly experienced EAP practitioner, and I'm relatively a recent arrival in EAP. And so obviously, as Antigone mentioned, this expertise and experience actually doesn't have to be equal. However, what happens when you're not associated with any higher education institution? We're out there on the margins, okay? So you could, if you have already done a pre-sessional course and managed to keep in touch with one or two colleagues, contact, as I did with Antigone. Maybe you have some general English or ESP colleagues who have worked in EAP. And another way could be maybe through teaching associations. But obviously it is a little bit harder when you're not actually in an institution.